Inside at last.
Welcome, fellow Taffers, to Inside at Last. My name is Alex, and we are back, and we have some new members to our podcast crew. And I would like to introduce, or maybe, guys, you can introduce yourself a bit. It's Jake and Seth. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for bringing me on. I'm Seth. I'm a Canadian-based game designer, and I found Thief through an IDOS demo disc. I think the first image of Thief I ever saw was that pre-release screenshot with the 3 zombies, and I showed it to my mom, and she said, "Oh my god, I'm never going to buy that for you." And the next time we went to EV Games, I found it on the shelf, and she went back on her word and bought it for me. So that is how I found Thief.
Okay. So like a normal mom story. Mine also had to do with my mom. So yeah, funny. And Jake, please tell us a bit about you and how you stumbled upon Thief.
Yes, hello. My name is Jake. I live in the United States, in the northeastern United States, and I stumbled upon Thief through YouTube videos. Specifically, a video by I'm gonna butcher his name. His first name is Dom, and his video is called Thief versus AAA Gaming, and I highly recommend it. It's a great video.
Oh yeah,
And I was just, you seen it? Oh, so good.
yeah.
I've seen that one as well.
It's so good. I'm not a big fan of like the video essays, but the way he was just describing Thief, and I kind of naturally just glided towards the Thief design and stuff like that. So I thought Thief looked really interesting. I'm a big fan of stealth games. I played Splinter Cell and Dishonored before I played Thief, so I was already kind of primed to sort of enjoy the gameplay of Thief. So it just looked so interesting to me with the gameplay and the story and the art.
So you are pretty new to the game, right?
The cover really grabbed me, so I was hooked from there. Yeah, I would say within the last like 5 years or so. So I think I hopefully maybe have a different perspective on it than maybe some older fans or some fans who played it on release. So yeah, I mean I have experience with other games and then came to Thief, so it was quite interesting to see kind of where the lineage was from Thief to later immersive sims or later stealth games.
Yeah, I think your perspective will be interesting because, since the community is so old, of course, you have like the old dudes, I would call them, the old taffs. And they often have a different view on, on missions and how to achieve things and play the game and what is better and not. And younger audience have often different opinions, which is interesting, I think.
I think that's something that's great about Thief, though. There's so many different ways people play it.
Don't rush it. We didn't introduce the topic.
Oh,
And that's
no.
been so one of the things interesting to me is playing do we lag playing the game and then seeing all the games that inspired Thief and then going back to the source, it's just been very interesting.
Yeah. Oh, that's yeah, the basics about you guys. Thanks for telling us a bit. And yeah, now we want to dive into our today's topic, and we thought that it's a good way to introduce you to the community, or at least as podcasters to the community. That we talk about our favorite game, Thief, of course, and why we love it so much. What's so great about the games? What's so intriguing and inspiring? And what does it do to our hearts? Made a, I had a start. So I was wondering, like when I played it for the first time, I got the demo, Beffert's Manor. It was in '98, I guess. Not, or was it '97? I don't know when the demo came out, but I think it was '98. And the game threw so much stuff at me that should normally be negative. Like I was scared. I didn't make any progress because I was scared, and I didn't know how the AI works. So, everything was like scary to me. But I was still so intrigued, and I played it for hours and hours, and I didn't even make it through the first room because, yeah, I didn't know what to expect. And I moved on slowly and slowly. And I was wondering today, like, what was it that came, why was it so intriguing? Why got I hooked so much? And I think, of course, it's the combination of all the things we will be talking about today. But I think the first thing is, in my opinion, is the sound. How do you guys see that?
Well, so basically, I just think that the game is so strong from a sound design standpoint because everything is so layered and on top of each other, and everything is so just detailed. And there's not even much music in the game, which I think really helps the game. I think if the game had like a really prominent soundtrack, I think that would probably hurt the game and kind of take us out of like the soundscape. But it's just everything kind of sounds like it should, if that makes sense, within the world of itself. Like you hit your weapon off of a wall and it makes noise, things like that. Step on a loud surface and it makes noise. And even today, think that's still impressive. I can't even imagine playing it when it came out and having those feelings.
Yeah, Thief definitely has a presence. I remember. So you found the demo, the playable demo, but when I had a demo disc, I had the IDOS demo disc that just had pictures and trailers. So my first experience with Thief was just images in like with a black background and a little gold border, and you could click through them. And they had a soundscape by Eric Brocious that was just the humming sound that you hear in some of the hallways in Beford's Manor. So I was just intrigued by that. I'd never seen a game presented in that way. I was probably about 7.5, so I probably shouldn't have been playing it in the first place, but it really pulled me in. I was amazed by it. And I wasn't disappointed when I got the full game either. Definitely delivered.
So to go off of that, what did you think? As I mean, even I played this game and I was an adult, and I had sort of trouble processing just everything the game was throwing at me from a gameplay standpoint, from a story standpoint, and just everything like that. As a kid, like, what did you think when you saw like all these zombies and Hammerites and pagans and just everything that the game was throwing at you just in the first couple levels?
Oh, it was so cool.
Maybe for me, I was actually, back in the days in 98, I was impressed by the graphics, which sounds strange. But for me, I think Half-Life was already out and I played that. And that was a good looking game, of course. But I really was so amazed by, you had the blackjack in your hand and you're swimming through the sewers to Beford's Manor. And there are all those lights. And I recognized, like, hey, the light is reflecting on the blackjack and on the sword. And I was just swimming through that canal back and forth, just checking like how the light and everything reacts, to each other. And this impressed me. So this was like maybe the first hour I played the game, just checking the light reflection on the blackjack. And and then I don't know, the guards, of course they looked strange, but I found them really realistic because of, they were talking in a really cool way. And then you have that sounds, of course, and you could tell where they were coming from, where is someone, even if you don't see them. And yeah, but from the graphic point of view, it was impressive. And of course, I like medieval stuff. And this was a game that really, you got me there. I was like, hey, I finally can walk through medieval things. At this point, I didn't know about supernatural stuff. That was a huge disappointment then when I got the full version of the game.
See,
but
that's
the start was that.
That's interesting. So you think that maybe that when you first played the game, the supernatural elements took you out of the game?
Totally.
See, that's interesting. Like, because I thought that too when I first played Thief. I thought, well, you could have this game be a straight up medieval thief like simulator, and I think the game would have still been innovative and still strong. And so interesting to me that they decided to sort of take that extra step and add that layer of supernatural, and then obviously Thief 2 adds like a steampunk kind of element to it. So I mean, I think you could have had just a medieval stealth game, and I think they would have been fine. So
I think that's the legacy of Dark Camelot, right? There was so much lore carried over.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And the farther you get into game development, you find that the levels you create towards the end of the game tend to be a little shy and recycled. And I think like Maw of Chaos, for example, is probably has a lot of Dark Camelot's DNA still in it.
Yeah, I think I wanted to say the same though. So I think the Dark Camelot influence is big here, and on the other hand, could imagine that the variety of enemies is maybe a bit boring after a while. If it's just the same realistic guards, just human enemies, and yeah, dogs would have looked dumb in the engine. So I think they had to add a bit of variety in the second game. I think they um, found a better solution, in my opinion. I think you have a lesser amount of enemies.
They're
but
focused.
They are yeah,
I
as you
agree.
say, they are focused and they are more of a threat. They are really, really dangerous and they have different abilities. Once just the cameras just spot you. Of course, there was cameras in the first game as well, but it was different. The cameras here were a character. And
Yes.
then you have those machines, of course, the Children of Karas. And this was, but one thing, both games have steampunk elements. I think, the first one already has steampunk as well, with all
Yeah.
this technical, electrical things.
Yeah,
The
for sure.
doohickeys.
I think they definitely doubled down on it in the second game, like with more, like you said, you mentioned the robots, and I think that makes the robots so much better, in my opinion, than say like the zombies is they can be approached in more ways than the zombies can. Like you can use a mine to destroy them, you can use a fire arrow, you can use water on the back of the vent, you can, you can use so many different things to kill the robots, whereas the zombies can really only be, blown up or holy water.
Or you can throw a mine at them, or you can
You
use a
can.
flash bomb
That's
on
true.
them, or you can use a fire arrow on them. So I think they have kind of the same amount of ways to kill them. But I know what you mean. Like shooting in the tank, of course, is a different explanation and is like a mechanic explained within the game. Why to do that this way and kill them from that one direction if you go with the
Makes
water
them a lot
arrow
more
and
hard to deal with if you make them
Yeah.
angry.
I guess a better way to put it too is that the robots behave much more like a stealth enemy, whereas the zombies, they can't be knocked out. I mean, the robots can't, but the zombies kind of their patrol pattern sometimes doesn't really fit a stealth game necessarily, whereas the robots have a set pattern and their peripheral vision is kind of a little bit limited compared to some other enemies. So I think that they do have a same amount of ways to be killed actually now that you mention it, but it just feels like the robots are more stealth enemies for some reason
yeah.
in my brain.
But we're losing track here. We are now talking about like the enemies already, and I think that this is more of a detailed part. I think we should start with the world and the lore of the game. I think this is like the first thing, or the this is standing overall because you are in that world and everything you do and see is in this world. So I think if you watch like a trailer back in the days, this was really making you excited. And let's talk about like why is the world so great, or the lore. And I think we can maybe take a quote from one of the community members. Is that, if that's okay for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, sure. So,
So
oh,
Did you want to read it out, like from Plutonia?
yes, let me pull up their quotes. Platonia's quotes. So he said a couple really interesting things, but I think
So it's Plutonia from YouTube, by the way. We asked questions to the community. The question, why do you love Thief? And you guys got us a lot of great answers. So and we try to mash them in here.
there's something he said that was really interesting. I thought was the interactions with the game world have enough interconnectedness and different factors that you can simply imagine what you could do and then do it, not because someone designed the game so that you can do that, but because the systems together mandate it that it has to be possible. So I think that's really interesting, and I completely agree with that. It makes the world make sense, even though the world is in very many ways fantastical, very foreign to like our world, but it has it obeys its own laws, if that makes sense. In
Yeah,
my
Absolutely.
and what I really like, and I just did a playthrough of Thief Gold again, which you can also watch on our YouTube channel. And what I felt again was like, okay, you are at Beffert's Manor, and there are already names dropped. Like he writes about some Ramirez, with his money list, and then there is a Victoria
Yeah,
somewhere
she's mentioned in the
named,
first mission
and
too.
and then
good
this
foreshadowing.
this Guinea or Ginny guy, and then later, when you are at Ramirez's mansion, then the guards talk, and they talk about Cracksclef prison, and that's and it feels like even if the levels are so separated, the writings, the letters you can read, and the conversations you can overhear, or things that get mentioned in another place, you see them maybe later or saw them earlier, and so the world feels real to you. Like this is a real world, and everything is connected to each other, and people are know about the places you have been to, like, and that is so amazing, like very believable. And I think it's the first time I saw that in games.
Well, yeah, the world is very much the first character that you meet, right? From the moment you're dropped into Bafford's Manor, there's that big gust of wind, and like you know exactly where you are. You're in a city street. You're outside of a lord's manor. You know, there's a clear divide between how well lit his manor is and how dark the cobblestone streets are. The peasants have to navigate by floating gas balls of light, whereas he
Yeah.
has an electric front gate.
Yeah, that's actually true. Like, yeah, it also shows like how the rich live, and then you see like how the poors live, and then of course you have, and I think this adds so much, and I think this is one of the reasons Thief 4 was also lagging. You have the different parties. You have like the Hammerites, and you have the pagans, and you have the
Yeah,
keepers, and you have, and then you have some different, like the thieves guild, um and
neutral kind of parties to the whole main conflict.
yeah, and it's so believable, like, and you can see, yeah, as you said, the conflicts, and of course you have the guards and the blue coats, or they're in the second game, but like everything is represented in the game, and it's believable to watch this, and interesting. It also adds, and this again adds to the gameplay, because you want to see and overlook and overhear those conversations, and you want to sneak into like a diary of some person and read it, because there could be something interesting, that, and or someone, just a, it's not a real example, but someone thinks like, oh, I think this guy is really nice. But because you've visited his place earlier, and found his book, like, okay, this is an asshole, but yeah, it feels so good.
I think too, it's a very efficient way to tell story. Like having these conversations, and you mentioned things like the notes. It's very brief, but it's very effective. You know what I mean? It's not like a cutscene that takes 3 hours, or it's not a dialogue wheel or something like that, or you're entering dialogue with a character that brings the game to a halt. It all like keeps the game flowing while still like immersing you in the game. There's no
Well,
taking you out of the game with sort of obtuse, story mechanics.
yeah, and just from a design standpoint, the ability of the designer as an individual to place little text documents within the level and to record a simple conversation and play it back and deliver story that way is just really great for a designer to work with. There's so many possibilities, and it gives every person their own way to like tell their own story in a level, right? How many level designers did we have on the first Thief?
Some I don't know, but I wanted to go on. And what they also do is that all the different parties have different ways of talking. Especially the hammers and the pagans. They have, even there they have character. In that, and then they have their looks, and they have like their typical surroundings, and everything is thought through, and they have their beliefs uh, and
Slang, lingo, all that stuff, like sneaksies and
yeah.
the way that the pagans talk and the way the Hamrites talk in sort of old English. I completely agree. Like it's such a low, like it's not a thing that requires like massive investment, but it's so much more effective. I feel like, you know what I mean? Like just having that dialogue written that way, so that
Yeah.
there's this culture divide between the factions, and there's this like ideological war that's going on, and it's not taking you out of the game. It's still keeping you in the moment while still like kind of you in the world. I think that's
and,
what's so
and
refreshing even today.
and you as Garrett, you are just like a silent watcher who comments on all of these things in a very sarcastic way, mostly. You are like inside, but on the same way you are totally outside of all of this. Because you are living under the radar, and you, but nobody knows about you, and it seems like at the same time everybody knows about you, and
Oh, it makes you a perfect vessel for the player.
yes, of course, and you are, you know way more than anybody else, it seems, because you know things about everybody.
I think it's
Well,
interesting too that the character is not necessarily directly involved in the conflict, although they get drawn into the conflict obviously later on. Garrett does, but a lesser game, if Thief was made today by a lesser development team, the final mission would be like, now you must choose, Hamrites or
yes,
pagans.
yeah, Garrett would be driving the action.
Yeah, it said like you're this character who's sort of involved, but you're sort of like you said, you're like an outsider. You're not really. Garrett doesn't care about the theology of the Hamrites or the pagans. He doesn't believe in any of their, their spiritual or their, ideological tenets. He's like a skeptic to all this, and he's just kind of along for the ride. So
But then he has in both games, at one point he has to combine their forces. Like in the first game, you get help from the hammers. It's not so prominent. It's just a little thing. But of course, suddenly you have to be. I'm missing the words here. Like. Um, Allies, right? You have to be allies, and in the second game, you have to be allies with the pagans, and that is also a thing, Like Garrett, on one side, he's always saying like, "Hey, I'm not doing this. I'm not getting into this," and at the end, he's the focused person who who rescues everybody,
Well, if Constantine took over, there'd be no city left to steal from, and same if Karis had destroyed it with rust gas. So it's in his best interest so he can keep stealing.
very true, very true.
Yeah, but I think also that Garrett is also a character that is played by other parties, a bit. And he always says like he's not, but then the keepers somehow, I don't want to say convince him, but they show him the necessity of doing certain actions. And then, yeah, Victoria tells him a bit what to do next, and he's always like, "I'm not joining this, but hey, let's go." Um,
I
and
think there's the right amount of skepticism too. Like he does give quite a bit of like, I mean, Victoria, spoilers, plucked out his eye. So I mean, obviously there should be some sort of animosity there, and he does resist her quite a bit until finally sort of capitulating and kind of like what Seth said, realizing that like if I don't stop this guy, like there's not going to be anything. So he's still kind of in a way he's motivated by self-interest, but he's sort of is altruistically motivated by self-interest, if that kind of makes sense.
yeah, but he's still human, because you see that in some ways. Like, I think especially when you are in that frozen guy, in the second game, that spy.
Oh yes,
Larkspur.
Yeah, and then when he dies in front of you, or he asks you to die, right?
yeah,
And
he asked you to
yeah,
euthanize him.
kill him, and he's like, "Yes, my friend." He has empathy for him at this point, and or if he discovers that someone is really bad, like I don't know, treating women badly or whatever, he's like commenting on that, you bastard, or something like that, and so this also makes him human, besides all his sarcastic and ironic commentary, and the way he's not convinced of anybody, but still, he has like an empathetic way of looking at things.
Great line by Steven when he's killing that pagan, and after he promises his revenge, he's like, Karis must be stopped. It's so good.
Yeah. And I wanted to make a point, but now I forgot. But yeah, as you said, like he's like a vessel for the player. I think that's the thing. Like you are watching all of this, and it's so interesting. But he's like the guy who's living in that world, right? And he knows a lot. And yeah, that's some ingenious design. And the character is so well written. Even if they don't show you so much. And that's what I wanted to say. What they also do, and that's ingenious, they show you very much, but on the same page they leave so much open for your own interpretation. And I think that is the reason why we are still getting a lot of fan missions that are playing in this world, and they are believable because there are many loose ends. And a lot of authors like picked something up from that, or just a character that was maybe just named somewhere, and now they use it like 20 years later in a fan mission. Like you construct a story around that, and that is amazing, and that is very, very great design. Like,
yeah, I think
if it makes people still think about it. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, that's perfectly fine. I think with lore, it's a tricky part, and that's what Thief nails. Is that sometimes when a game has too much lore, it becomes kind of tedious for the player and overwhelming, and they're just reading all these, codex entries or going through all this stuff. But
Mass Effect, yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
but
Word
Thief gives you
vomit.
like just enough where you're like, it's like being a kid and like you don't really understand how like the world is, and you just kind of are imagining things and you're kind of filling in the details in your head. I think Thief has that kind of to it where you're getting just enough where you can kind of shit out, but not
Nice
enough where
analogy.
not enough where it becomes so just overwhelming where you have lingo, terminology, and all this kind of stuff. It's a perfect balance between like showing and telling.
And then on the same, it's like very serious, but then you have the guards, the goofy guards that make things funny. Like, I just say Lady Fat Bottom, which is one of my all-time favorite lines. Like the guards, or what they are talking about, logics in the world. That's also very great. If in the first mission, like where Benny and the other Daniel, I don't know what his guard's name is, they are talking like, hey, wouldn't it be better to have more guards on the inside? No, it should be, they should be on the outside to get the bad guys before they come in. Oh, right,
You Taffer, yep. Yeah, that's so. Must have been rats.
Yeah, the guards definitely lend a lot to the game.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky balancing act, right? Because
I think a big part of Thief is the way it delivers, right? It has a specific pace. And a lot of games use story to drive action, but Thief is almost entirely action, with the story being given as sort of a break from having to do anything. You're usually reading or listening, right? So, like, that works very well with the pacing of the gameplay, which is this, for the first time player anyway, especially a young one, this like ongoing increasing sense of dread. You never know when you're going to get caught or what's going to be around the corner. But when you find a book to read, suddenly you have a quiet moment where you don't have to worry.
I think this is something that maybe fits from Plutonia as well, that he says like the game hardly ever reminds you that it's a game by making you run into a wall of missing game design. I think
absolutely.
This goes a bit along with what you're saying, like you're entirely it's first person, you are always in the action, but I think you really made a good point. Like it's not the story is like waved into the world and not the other way around, like that it floats with the story. No, the story floats within your actions.
And to go to kind of piggyback off too of what Platonia said, there's no moment where it's like press the E button to look at the explosion and we'll pull the camera in and like you'll watch this cinematic like moment that we created. Like it's a very much, I think you said something similar earlier about this, Seth, but it's very much a game that is like player driven, and it's driven by the player, not by the designer, with things like that. And it adds to the immersion, which we were talking about too, because the player is the engine that's like pulling the train, so to speak.
And it's very brave because it can happen, and the designers had to have that in mind, that you can look at a different direction. Something has happened at one point, and they can't be really sure that you are really looking into this direction. If that happens, you can just ignore certain things, and so they had to find a real way, like what is really important. What does the player have to know? And what can they miss? But if they find it, it's still interesting enough. So you have just little main story things within the game, in the mission actually. It's then told by cutscenes, but you have so many interesting side stories. So it keeps it interesting. No matter if you're into the main story, then you can just follow that, or you are really interested in the world, and it adds and it gives you a lot, little pieces. So and yeah, then we are back at what you said. Then the rest you make up in your head.
Well, I think that's because everyone plays a different Garrett, right? Everyone's Garrett is a representation of their own inner dialogue, doing the things that that occur to them as they're playing, right? So my friend he plays a Garrett that doesn't kill, whereas I play the Garrett that runs around knocking everyone out. So one person's Garrett might never read anything because they're illiterate, I guess. But another person's Garrett might find all the scrolls in the level.
Yeah. So yeah, it's also
that's a
said
good point, actually, and that kind of
James Earl
segues into
Cash
something
that says the
else
enormous
that was
freedom
written.
of movement. I think this also adds to this, but this is also some gameplay. Yeah. Oh, I made a mistake. I read quotes that we marked for a different chapter. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's
But
all
I
right.
think they also fitted
Yeah, some of these fit kind of multiple categories. I was going to bring up something that I don't know how you say this name. I apologize, sir. I'm going to butcher your name. Ridnar I believe is how you say his name. But
yeah, something like that. Ritnar Tim.
if I said your name, feel free to correct me, and I will do my best to
from
rectify.
YouTube.
He says, unlike many modern immersive sims where stealth is just one option, often the worst one, here is the core of the game, so every tool, weapon, and mechanic is designed around it, so it works really well. And I agree with that, because you mentioned something about how, it all works well together. And I think that that's so true with the game, is that, a lot of games, these mechanics that they're throwing at you in this world that they're throwing at you kind of wouldn't fit so well together. But everything with Thief, from the gameplay to a story standpoint, kind of is all feeding back into the same river, if you so to speak. It's all flowing as one.
Yeah, and it's the game in so many ways is interconnected, and it has its logics. Like they have their steampunk elements, and of course they again add to the gameplay. With switches and lights you can turn off, and then you have those elemental crystals on your arrows that are kind of make sense. And in that world, they are also believable, and they also add to the gameplay. Or rope arrows, or I think the best character in the game is rope arrows. Besides Garrett.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. I have some emotional connection to my rope arrows. I hardly leave them behind.
Can't leave them behind. Yeah, they have to come with you.
See, that was where the game started to really click with me, is when rope arrows came into the equation. Because I just remember shooting the first rope arrow into that plank of wood. I believe it's in the sword, and I just thought that was so amazing. And even for now, because games I don't think use verticality like that even now. But for back then, I can't imagine like playing like you guys did closer to launch, and just having this game where verticality comes into play, where now you're climbing up and you can be above guards and you can do all this sort of things. So
And you can see in modern Thief games, in Deadly Shadows, where you just had that wall climbing gloves,
Yeah.
and in Thief 2014, where you had the spots that you could only use. So back in the days, I think it's still an impressive technique, in my opinion. I have no idea about programming, but I think it's impressive to work something like that into a game from '98.
Oh,
I'm sure it
absolutely.
wasn't easy.
And here's another quote from Adrian. Oh, sorry, you wanted to add something?
Oh no, I was just gonna finish up with something I remembered. What I was gonna say about Renardim's quote. I think too, like we
Sorry.
all we all kind of play our own Garrett, kind of like Seth said, but we're also still all playing a stealth game. You know, there's some variation of it, and I think that's a really important thing. Is that the game Ridnar mentions about games that kind of have stealth as like a back option, as like a worst option. I think that's true. It's like
Yeah.
Thief gives you enough structure. Everybody's playing a stealth game, but everybody's playing like a different stealth game with a different Garrett.
Yeah, it gives you, it gives you so much to think about and to add to the lore, but on the same level, it gives you a lot of freedom in many ways. And yeah, and I want to quote Adrian J here, also from YouTube, that said the setting and the aesthetics are very mature. It really conveys dark fantasy, but has lots of humor as well. There really is a strong feeling that this world is consistent. While there's magic and zombies and many other cliched things, they are done believable within a world full of beggars, eccentric noblemen. In any other fantasy setting, the Hemorrhoids would be religious zealots and nothing more. But here, there are nuances. They are both a force of civilization and oppression at the same time. The dialect between Hemorrhoids and pagans amid a corrupt city creates dramatic tension. But your everyday man is still very much focused on his own essential problems about his peers, about the bear pits, about his place in the world, and will occasionally laugh at his misery. It's not all black and white and humorless and oblivious to the world around the protagonist, as the case with Thief 2014 and many other like-minded games. I think this is a very good commentary.
Great.
Thanks for
Yeah,
that.
that's really good. Thanks for writing in, man. That's really well written. I think that's something that we all agree with for the most part, is that consistent world building.
Yeah, and so from that part, I think for the quotes
And
for the lore and world, that's it. So thanks a lot for your thoughts about
I
that.
just want to add one more thing to that too. I think he mentions a really good point, is the whole thing about the beggars and the noblemen. There's like some sort of kind of class and sort of economic things in Thief, but it's not like a thing where like in Thief 2014 where it kind of takes like center stage. You know what I mean? Like they handle it with such a nuanced touch, and he brings that up in his point about how it's not black and white and how there is sort of shades of gray and there's nuance to the conflict. I think if the game was made now, I think the whole kind of thing with the beggars and the lords and the nobles and things like that, I think that would be like the game would kind of bombastically like hit you over the head with that. But it's handled with such subtlety in the original Thief games.
And what I also like is, that, for example, the Hemorrhoids, they are presented to you as like fanatics that believe in strange ancient gods. And in the first game, it's also commented on by Garrett, I think, like where he says, "So the trickster is real," you know.
Yeah.
So everything
And he's surprised.
the Hemorrhoids believed in, or not everything. You don't see the builder, but they talk about this guy, the trickster, and yes, they were right all the time. He is real and he will come back and he's coming back. So and now the Hemorrhoids are there to help you fighting against it. You are the tool that can do it, but it's very cool because they are not just stupid fanatics.
Well, I want to
Yeah.
throw something onto that, and that's that along with all of the answers Thief gives about its world, it also leaves so many things unanswered, right?
Yep.
For example, the trickster, who is supposedly a god, can be killed by a lowly thief. So, was he really the trickster, or was he just some entity pretending to be the trickster? We never see the builder, so we don't have that answer. I think that's something that's great about Thief.
Huh. I never thought about this because he's addressed by pagans as the trickster, but yeah, I thought about that. He's for a god, he's pretty, I don't know,
Vulnerable.
he
Yeah,
relies, vulnerable, and he relies on certain things and on the, that's what I
intermediaries.
was wondering. Like he wasn't able to get the talismans. Like he needs Garrett again for that.
Well,
Like
if he is the god, if he is a trickster god, like similar to Loki or Pan, maybe he pulled another trick. You never know. Maybe
a
this is
trickster. Maybe he's like the bad Jesus.
I
maybe
think that
he.
was a missed opportunity for Thief's subsequent games, right? Because that implies a cycle. It implies that these people are archetypes that come along every so often, every few generations. So Garrett was one trickster in a line of tricksters that appeared, and I think in an interesting way, the developers twisted that with the mechanics or the mechanists and the Hammerites, but it started to sort of lose the thread with Thief 3 and entirely with Thief 4, right?
I agree.
Yeah, maybe the witch is also some sort of trickster.
I
In
guess
Thief
that's
Deadly
true.
Shadow, like because she seems similar powerful like Constantine or the trickster, whoever he is. Like she's a similar threat in my opinion.
Well, this is another thing, like you mentioned about, and I love the fact that Thief doesn't explain all this because it lets us have these kind of discussions. But like, how strong is pagan magic versus like glyph magic that like the keepers use? Like, we don't really have that sort of. There's never like an explanation like, oh, glyphs are definitely more powerful than like like if the trickster and say the hag got into a fight, like who would win? You know what I mean? Like we don't know. That's what's so interesting because we don't have that. The game doesn't over explain and says like, oh, the trickster is this powerful and the hag is like this power. You know what I mean? Like it's
Well,
all
the limits of the character's magic are never elucidated. Like the
I know, I love
trickster
that.
is effectively killed by his own magic, right? Garrett replaces the eye with a dead eye of stone, and then it just blows up in Constantine's face, which implies, he killed himself in a way.
Yeah, it was his fault. Um, yeah, but that's a good thing because we are still talking about it.
For sure.
because we don't know, and that's and it's also how many interpretations of the story we already made when we talked about original missions, and there are still theories. Like we talk about it in the podcast, and then on the forums, people were doing their own interpretation of what happened. Like. And yeah, that's great. That's great writing and great world design.
Something I kind of wanted to touch on to kind of to add to this kind of discussion about the world building and about the factions is, I think it's so interesting too because you can clearly see an ideology like the Hammers are all about order, about building. Obviously, they worship the builder, and they're all about sort of improving civilization in their own way, whereas the pagans are all about kind of chaos and kind of lawlessness and kind of turning
Are they?
civilization. Well, I mean, they are and they aren't, I guess, right? Because they do have their own order, right? Because like they have their own, you know, priestesses like Victoria, and they have their own gods. So it is interesting because like they're supposedly committed to chaos, but now that you mention that with that retort, it's kind of true. Like they want to replace order with chaos, but their version of chaos has its own form of order.
The thing is, it's like someone said that um, in another commentary. I think it was that it shows like some modern world conflicts as well. Like and I think in that case, it's like nature against modern society and
Yep, exactly.
economy, and that's what we're facing at the moment a lot. And they just want to bring back nature, which was there first. So you know they are kind of you can kind of understand what they're doing or want to do at least.
Yeah, and at the same time, like you can see, look at the hammers and all that they've invented and all they've improved, and you can be like, well, this is an improvement, in some ways to the standard of living, but in other ways, you have that, and then I think it's so fascinating about the first two games, especially, is that you have kind of both examples of, you mentioned, I think this, Alex, but they both become extremists, right? In the first game, you have the
Yep.
trickster kind of fulfilling his plan and kind of taking that ideology to its natural conclusion. And then in the second game, you have Karis and the Mechanists, who are kind of the extremist, fundamentalist kind of Hammerites in a way, and they're taking that ideology to its, logical conclusion, which is the complete elimination of organic life, basically altogether, for the most part.
Well, I think in that way, Karis is the builder and Constantine is the trickster, you know?
Yeah, kind of. But on the other hand, that and there we come to the realistic part that makes it so believable. At the end, he is a fanatic, Karis. So suddenly there are two versions of the builder. Like the stone hammer builder and the metal whatever builder, and of course Karis says like he is the builder at the end. At least he thinks that. And so this shows, okay, in some way it's just some ideology, so made up by someone. So it could be the same with the Hammerites. You don't know the origins. Maybe there was a real builder, maybe there was not. But of course, but Kara's version is made up in his head.
Yeah, I love
Something I
that.
find interesting about the religions is that outside of the people who participate in them, we rarely, if ever, hear anyone in the world mention the builder, right? We almost never read of a servant who believes in the builder.
Yes and no, right? I sometimes I mix things up with fan missions because there are people that pray to the builder, but then I don't know if it was in the original game. Meh. But
I don't know that it was.
Truart, for example.
I think if anyone remembers of that being in the base game, they should comment, right? I would love to hear that.
But look at Sheriff Truart. He has still a hammer chapel in his house.
Oh, that's a good point.
And and he's part of the world.
That's true.
He's not from one of those parties. So he's part of the police party, maybe. But
is he not having his chapel replaced?
Yeah, but he is believing in the builder.
Interesting.
Maybe now he's.
But
I'm sorry.
Builder 2.0 made by Karis, but he's still believing in the builder.
I actually never read Truart that way. I read Truart as being a relatively wealthy man and either inheriting or buying this estate that just happened to have a chapel in it, as many rich patrons do have access to their own church or did in medieval times. And I read Truart as having the chapel for show. He has this hammer chapel in this weathered estate which he owns that might be familial, and then he's switching it over. He's switching faiths.
Or maybe it shows maybe the origins, because I think it's the family manor. So his father and grandfather and whatever already lived there. So maybe they were Hammerites, and now he's changing to the Mechanist belief. So that might be.
That's a
well. We all know he's in bed with Karis too.
I think that brings up a good point, though, is that when you guys are talking about is we don't really know how many people in the world, like how many of them are Hammerites. We don't know, are Hammerites popular really outside of their own like sort of ideology and outside their own circle? Or, is the public at large really Hammerites? Do they think they're extreme? Do they think that they're reasonable? I think that's an interesting thing. The game never explains that.
They are pretty powerful, so there must be something, and they have their kind of their own laws for some,
yeah,
and they sometimes are used like judges or something like that. But on the other hand, of course, you could say, I never read that with the poor people. So now in the second game, you see that many riches, of course, are going over to the Mechanists, but maybe not for their beliefs, but they give them some advantages in life,
yeah, absolutely, they're connected.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, is this Hammerite, and as you just said, Alex, like we see in the second game, that a lot of those that are wealthy in the city are connected to the Mechanists, or is the Hammerites a religion of sort of the wealthier, or is the pagans more of a religion of the poor or the lower class? Like the game doesn't really explain that, which I mean, it's sort of things that we have to infer through world building. And
yeah, but it glimpses through here and there, I think, it's like yeah, what is closer to yourself? Of course, if I'm rich, and of course I would go to the mechanist if they can give me cheap servants and security. Yes, maybe I laugh at Karras, but hey, he gives me all those amazing things I could buy, and I have the money for. And then you are poor, so maybe you would maybe would live a happier life in the woods because their fruits are free there and food. So it yeah, it actually is a good point.
Well, there's an interesting commentary as well in that the Hamerites purport to be a fundamentalist and ascetic religion, but they occupy these huge spaces, whereas the pagans really are living an ascetic lifestyle and like self-subsiding, ostensibly growing their own food. Maybe they're watering the food with the blood of their enemies, but they are growing their own food.
Come on.
You never see, and you also never see, like, you have St. Edgar's Cathedral, and, you have Soul Forge for the Mechanists and Angel Watch for the Mechanists. You never see, like, a giant, you have some pagan sort of sanctuaries, but you never see, like, a giant pagan temple in the same way that you see a Mechanist or a Hammerite Cathedral, where it's just this more organized thing. The pagans, true to kind of their ideology, even their places of worship are a little bit more disorganized and a little bit more, connected with nature and that
Instead of
aesthetic.
You could
instead
say
of seeing
that,
huge cathedrals, you see huge, terrifying tree beasts.
yeah,
That's true.
and their cathedrals are the forest, and they are way bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that we could talk for hours. Maybe we should have just taken one of those topics as one episode.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
But I think we should go on a bit, and I think the next thing to talk about is the main character. And I think this will lead us to the other characters as well. I think we talked already a lot about Garrett, but what makes him so great? Why is he so great to so many people and still on so many top lists of top characters of all time in games?
I like Garrett because he's terrified like me. He's afraid. He's as afraid as I am to take the next step forward. Like at least in a first time playthrough, I was so spooked. I spent forever swimming in those cisterns underneath Beford's Manor, thinking I was going to drown or that they were slowly filling up because of the water overhead. And I like Garrett because I feel like he's as cautious as I am. It works with the narrative.
Yeah.
I think that
So go on.
that's a good point. I think for me, I was gonna say for me, there's a great line. I think it's in the second game. It's before shipping and receiving, where he's like, I don't want to do this, but my rent's due. I gotta go pay my rent and like, shipping containers, and that just like completely like floored me. Like how many games or how many pieces of fiction is the main character, like I'm motivated by paying my rent. I find that so refreshing. Most games, it's I got to go save the world. Garrett doesn't go out. He doesn't intend to save the world. He intends to, be motivated by his own self-interest. And, it's only through, like we talked about earlier, it's only through these extenuating circumstances that he is kind of pulled into saving the world. And I think that's so refreshing. He's not a character, much like the world that we talked about. He is so believable in himself because he follows these consistent principles. He's motivated by stealing. He's motivated by surviving. But his self-interest kind of brings him into the heroic role. I think that's why I like him, is that he is so real in his own within his own world, in his own rules.
I think, and that's my theory I have for a lot of stealth games, but for Garrett especially, I think my belief is that a lot of people that like stealth games, and stealth games often imply that you feel that you outsmarted your enemies because you didn't go, like directly to them and shoot them in the face. No, you outsmart them, like the trickster, for example.
Absolutely.
And I think that many stealth players are intelligent people. I think they have a tendency to be like artists and stuff like that, and also for depression and stuff like that. Like a lot of people I met or if you read on the forums, like people are talking about this sometimes, and And then you have Garrett, who is also a dark character. And I think Garrett is also someone who, he didn't arrive. He's still looking. He's always on, you know, looking for the next job, and maybe the next job that pays him so well that he could retire. But on the same way, it's like, if he would reach that goal, if just imagine Constantine, would have been honest, and he would have given him all the money when he got the eye, and then Garrett would retire. But I think then he would be, it would be boring for him. So at one point, I think he would take the next job, and he sometimes says like, oh, now it's just pickpocketing, and nothing interesting. And I think people can relate to this. And then those intelligent people I'm talking about, they are very sarcastic. They like black humor, and Garrett gives them this, with his commentary on the world. And those intelligent people, they see what's happening, and they get the connections. They don't want to have presented the whole story on a plate. No, they want their brains to be working on this, and the creativity that they have in themselves. And I believe that this, that many people that like stealth games, and especially Thief, are a bit like what I just described.
I think that's a good point, and I think that stealth games in a way are kind of puzzle games because like you're sort of given, you're given the guards, you're given the cameras, or what have, given the layout of the level, and it's kind of up to the player to figure out how they're going to tackle these challenges in whatever way they can. And I completely agree. I think if you look at other main characters of stealth games besides Garrett, they're all a little bit cynical, and they're all a little bit sort of world weary, and they're all kind of have this sort of cleverness to them.
Sam Fisher
So
and
I think
Hitman, for
Sam
example.
Fisher, yep, Sam Fisher is another one. I mean, Solid Snake has a little bit of wit to him, and
47 is like that.
yep, absolutely. Corvo, also voiced by the amazing Stephen Russell in Dishonored 2.
I liked him more when he was silent, but not because of Stephen Russell, but it had something special.
It fits the game better, but I think regardless, like that character still has like a little bit of that sort of cynical kind of world weariness to him, and I think
and a great voice,
right. And a great voice, of course. We love Steven, of course, friend of the show.
Yeah, yes, of course. No, but I think that is something that Garrett really provides to those people. That he's like a I don't want to say like a megaphone, but he says things they would maybe also say.
He's the voice of the viewer.
Yeah, and he leaves you enough space, to make your own comments.
Garrett is also somebody that like. I don't think he would be a very social person. Obviously, he has, some friends, mostly work friends, but Garrett is someone I would
friends.
work. I guess you'd call friend, right? Work acquaintances, like Bazo and things like that. I don't know if I'd call Cuddy an acquaintance, but
I think Bazo is his only friend somehow, and he still talks in another very fond way about him.
Exactly. He talks so bad about Bazo. He's he
all
says
favors.
he says in Running Interference on the first mission of Thief 2, he can't really sneak at all, but he sure knows how to work a lock, you know what I mean? So he's like kind of damning his friend with faint praise.
And he's like in love, like Garrett never got into this, but hey, he's just, Besso's just human, like that. But this is just my interpretation of what Garrett says. Garrett doesn't say that.
No, I got that too. He kind of comments. I don't know explicitly, but he kind of gives that kind of vibe of like, oh, he's in love. You know what I mean? Like he sort of seems like he's a little bit skeptical of true love. But again, that goes back to what we were saying earlier. There's no, Garrett doesn't give a soliloquy where he goes, love is a lie, and I'm a cynic and stuff like that. It's all done with subtlety, with class, with a soft touch.
I've always acquainted feelings with getting caught. I think that was the sentence.
Oh yes, that's a great
first
quote.
Sentence of the game, like Thief 2.
That's one of the best quotes of the series, I think. So much said with so few words.
Yeah. No, but I think that is a lot of Garrett. And then at the same time, as I said before, like, he always feels, he behaves like, he's making his own decisions. But yes and no, because look at his job. He's not deciding like, hey, I want to break into this really high in that prison. But he's driven by circumstances or maybe by people that gave him this job. Like, hey, here's a bag of money. I want you to steal this in the police station. Do it for me. Okay.
Well, that's the thing too, is that, we talked about earlier about how, him, saying, oh, I got to go pickpocketing. And like, how much money does he really need? Like, at some point, he's got to be doing some of this.
How is he burning through all of this?
Yes, how is he burning through this money? Because he's a single guy who lives in an apartment, so it's like in the city. So it's like he doesn't have, all these, I guess he has his thieving equipment that he has to buy, but how much of this is due to the fact that he has to do it, and how much of it is that he wants to do it?
I think that's partially answered by the gameplay, in that like all the money you get from the previous mission is in the shop in the next mission, and you spend all of it. You only have like usually 50 gold left over by the end of all your spending, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess the answer is that Garrett just blows all his money on work.
Yeah, those flash bombs don't come easy.
Yeah, what do you call it? Blah 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 of investment.
Don't come cheap.
Yeah, no, but it's a economical word. But yeah,
lifestyle inflation.
No. Investment is the second word, but if you want to get back your investment, I don't know.
Return on investment.
A return on investment, right? So yeah,
Dividends. You're looking for those dividends.
And yeah, I lost it here. So maybe you can go on. Maybe it comes to my mind again.
Oh, and I was gonna say, if we want to talk about the other main characters, I think they all, besides Garrett, they all sort of, for the most part, have a sort of different view than he does. I mean, you look at the Keepers, and you look at, Artemis, for example, and
because they are driven by ideology.
Ideology, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
And
so
Garrett is not really, but he's driven by his own. He's a kleptomaniac. Let's say it.
He is. I mean, yeah. Like, does he have to steal those small pieces of silver that are worth very little? Like,
maybe that's why he takes so many jobs on.
Yeah, and because he's spending all the money on rope arrows and gas mines.
Who is making these? That's another thing I always wondered. I'm like, who is making these gadgets?
Hemorrhoids, I think, in some way, and I think they are pretty far in in their industrialization. So there seems to be a market.
That's true. I'm glad the game has enough foresight though to not throw all the games do this thing where they're like, okay, we're gonna give you this gadget or we're gonna give you this item, and now the enemies are gonna use it too. Because like, could you imagine if like the Hammerite started throwing down flash bombs and just how much of a mess that would be?
You can already blind yourself with one. Yeah.
I mean, it would be cool from like a story standpoint, but I think from like play standpoint, I mean, I played other games where enemies can throw like disorienting, like screen blinding items at you, and you're like, like not this again. I gotta wait this out. You know what I mean? I mean, it would make sense though from like a story standpoint, right? They're making these gadgets; they should probably use them.
Yeah, but and what? Just imagine. I don't know who makes the flash bombs, but if it's the Hemorrhoids, why do they do it? Well, what is an everyday purpose of a flash bomb besides?
I think Farkas makes some of the equipment that he sells. Farkas made the lockpicks.
He doesn't do it anymore, but
certainly not.
He's out of business, I think.
I just recalled. I think the third game maybe gets into this more, but aren't some of the gadgets have an implied supernatural origin, specifically the water arrows and the moss arrows, because you always find them around where they grow in the water or in the moss?
Yeah, but that's the thing. I just thought about this. I don't know if I think I even commented on my Let's Play on this, because sometimes they grow in like natural places, but then when you see them in a cutscene or something, they totally look like they are made out of
fabricated
glass. Yeah, and crafted. And so I don't know. Of course, a rope arrow somehow makes sense. You can do that, and there's at least the physical believability is there. but yeah, it seems, they are not out of this world. So you can imagine that in this world they can build little glass canisters with gas and water in it, and on the other hand, yeah, they are growing in the wild. So yeah, this is not explained, but still gives us stuff to talk about.
My interpretation of the crystals is that Garrett carries the crystals around, the glass crystals, the ampoules, and when you find them, you're just filling up the ones he has on his belt. So that's why you find them in fountains and gardens, is like Garrett's gathering the materials he needs to put them together.
But why
He's the
does he
professional.
buy water arrows in the shop then?
I assume that
It's
he's
a
just
video game. No.
I assume he's just buying the materials to put them together and putting them together between missions. Or like maybe some shops sell prefabricated arrows that come with heads,
I think that is your brain just wants to find, an explanation
Yeah.
just to have
Oh,
one.
absolutely.
It's interesting. I do think that we're kind of rubbing up against the suspension of disbelief, where it's like, okay, like this is something that like they kind of tried to think of, but they kind of didn't something committed down to it. Like I think in the third game especially, they kind of doubled down on the fact that the water arrows and the moss arrows were supernatural, but then in other ways, like in the earlier games, like you said, they kind of were implying that they were sort of prefabricated. Excuse me. So
Yeah,
it's like I think they probably they kind of didn't really have a something hammered down, no pun intended, in terms of the origins of these things.
And what is also, like they can already create a mechanical eye that connects to Garrett's brain, and can zoom and Bluetoothly connect to throwing eyes, through little cameras Garrett throws around, and then he can see through it. And then they need mechanists to build really primitive robots that run on steam and fire, but he has that thing in his head, like it's yeah, sometimes I think you shouldn't think too much about it.
Yeah, there's
Well,
some where
humans
you
are
definitely
electric.
butt up.
What?
You butt up against suspension of disbelief. Sorry, go ahead.
Humans run on a basic kind of electricity, don't they? Maybe that's powering his eye.
Yeah, and they also have water in their body, so maybe Garrett is just sucking up
He's just peeing in a crystal.
His body temperature. His body temperature is
blood
the
arrows.
steam of his body. Yes.
Oh, he just it's just damn, what is it called? I have to Google it. What is it? Saliva? What do you call that?
Saliva? Spit?
Spittle. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe he's just doing that.
I like the pee theory.
The P arrow. Yeah,
Makes,
that would.
the Girardi arrow. Makes,
Just imagine like a guy. He doesn't need the arrows. There's just when the guards, when they are walking around and they see how the torches are blown out, and then they just see like a line of liquid, on the wall that goes up to it.
Garrett eats a lot of asparagus.
No, he just
You can use it to attract the cards or repel them.
You know
I
what?
guess.
The oil cans in Thief Deadly Shadows, they are very yellow, if I remember it correctly.
They are. Yeah, they are yellow. They're like a bright, shiny yellow.
Garrett should drink more.
It's all the alcohol he spends his money on.
Yeah.
Well, we know that who invented those. Benny definitely invented the Girardi flasks. That seems like a Benny invention.
I can make the connection right now. What do you mean?
Oh, just how
Benny's
goofy.
always drunk.
Well, that too. Yeah, that too. Just how goofy he is.
Okay. I now I get it. Okay. Yeah.
And he spilled meat on the rug, supposedly.
Yeah. Yeah. So everything seems totally legit, and I'm happy that we could finally explain it to all of the Taffers what's really going on in the world of Thief and P.
Yes. Inside, we are truly inside at last.
Yeah. Peeve. Yeah, but yeah, that's I think that's our Garrett. I think there's way more, of course, you could add to him, but I think we covered like the main essence of him, maybe.
Yeah, his arc I think is interesting. In some ways he kind of ends in the same place, and in some ways he ends in a really different place. So from who he was when the series started.
Did we mark anything about Garrett on our comments from the community?
I think that you and I had some stuff written, but I'm not sure if nobody in the community really touched on Garrett too much.
No, I think of course they just had a comment section, and I think they went in general about the game and the world. I think the basic is the world. If the world wouldn't be believable, you have great characters in other games as well, but maybe the world isn't as great,
Or it's
and
too explained, or too not explained enough, or things like that. I find with so many games they just get so fascinated and so in love with their own lore that they don't
yeah.
focus on telling like a simple story and letting the player do the heavy lifting, which is, as we've been saying, is what Thief definitely does.
I think the first time that a character again got me was Geralt from The Witcher, because he's also very sarcastic and commenting on the world, and of course he's interacting with the people and saying things to their face. But I think he's the first after Geralt that I really adored as a character.
It's interesting because they're both, in my opinion, they're both very similar. Like you said, they have that cynicism. They have
Outsider.
some wit, outsider, and they're both very like they both fall back on like I'm just doing my job, kind of thing. Garrett often kind of says that in so many words. He's like, I got a job to do, and
And
Geralt
they
also
have a
says that.
clear opinion or a feeling of justice. That's something I think Garrett also has. Like he's not going after laws because he knows that many laws are made by rich people or fanatic people for their own good. But he has a feeling for justice, what is right and what is wrong in this world, and it's what is fair and not, and so on. And I think that is something that also is a characteristic of Garrett.
And they both inevitably get, even though they both claim to be apolitical, they both inevitably get pulled into politics because of their skills and because of their morality.
Right. Yeah, actually, you're right. Yeah, great
Yeah.
observation. And in a similar way, somehow, for a bigger good that, for others, but on the same, they have their own agenda. And yeah, but The Witcher has sex scenes, and of course, that's most important to many players, I think.
That would not fit in Thief, I think. I think that would be very jarring.
I would have loved to have Triss Merigold in Thief. Triss Merigold should be in every game in the world.
I mean, some fan missions do. It's not the base game, but some fan missions do have allusions to Garrett's sex life.
And women with red hairs. Mostly it's a woman with red hair when the nerd's fantasy. No, was it in Pura's
Calendra's Cistern.
Legacy? There was this red-haired woman, I think, that made that comment, look at my butt, doesn't it look like Lara Croft's, or what was it?
I missed that. I know at the end of Calendra's Cistern, Garrett sleeps with Mercedes.
Yeah, Mercedes was her name, right? And she appears in the second game, and then she makes some weird comment. But this is another topic, and we talked about it in episode 9 with Pura. If you want to dive into that.
So I wanted to. I'm sorry.
No, go on.
I was going to say something that we kind of were touching on a little bit is like, we're talking about The Witcher, and then we were talking a little bit about, I brought Dishonored, and about what games that we kind of compare Thief to. I was curious what you guys think about that.
Games.
Humorously enough, I was playing Tomb Raider at the same time I was playing Thief.
Yeah, me too. It was 98 was Tomb Raider 2, or was it already? No, it was already 3. But I think 2 was the better game, of course. I think everybody thinks that. But it's a very different game in my opinion.
Because
Certainly.
because when you guys played Thief, obviously you were comparing it to things that were more contemporary. By the time I played Thief, I was comparing it to a lot of the Thief successors, or the spiritual successors. So
That's
I
Yeah,
find
that
that
makes sense.
interesting.
Yeah, tell us about how that was for you, besides the bad graphics. But how was that? This is actually very interesting because you were familiar with games that were inspired by Thief, because that's a fact that Thief invented the first-person stealth mechanisms in that way. I'm sure, and
Definitely pioneered them.
pioneered them. Yes, and a lot of those elements you can see nowadays in shooters like Far Cry, for example, and a lot of other games. But yeah, how is your perspective? You've already seen a lot of the Thief-inspired games or elements in games, and then suddenly you stumble upon the original, and how's that?
I think it was interesting because a lot of people say, oh, like when something gets brought up, like Thief or any game that's with a certain amount of age, people go, oh, you just like it because you played it when you were a kid. Well, I mean, I didn't play this game until I was in my 20s. So playing the game, I thought that a couple of things really stuck out to me. And one is that in Thief, all of the levels, I should say in Thief 1 and 2, once you're in the mission, there's no loading. It's all one cohesive level. I thought mind blowing because games nowadays, I mean, games are kind of moving towards kind of trying to cut down loading times, but that was such a breath of fresh air going from like a Thief successor like Dishonored. Dishonored is, I think, a very strong game, but that game is punctuated by loading times. And the first two Thief games, you load between the mission, but once you're in, and I love that. I love that there's no interruptions between the gameplay. I mean, that just goes back to what we were saying earlier. I'll just nice together. And I think if there was loading, imagine you get in and you're getting into Bafford's Manor, and the game has to load for like a minute. That would be so.
Imagine us that played the first two games when they came out, and then you get Thief Deadly Shadows on day one, and
Yep.
then suddenly you have that strange foggy wall there that you have to go into, and when you go back, then the guards are still in the same position they were when you left, and when they were looking for you, they are still looking for you 20 minutes
Oh,
later
I
or
know.
whatever.
That's so that's such a negative to that
So
game.
thanks to the guys that made the mod that
Sneaky upgrade.
yeah, that is that the game so much profits from that.
So yeah, I mean
Was
that
that
was
not
one
a
of the things that
problem in
struck
the
me.
development of Dark Project?
Mm.
They were trying to prevent
was-
there from being loading screens.
It was a problem because the games were made for the Xbox.
Yeah, it had to run on the
and
original Xbox, which had a very small amount of RAM.
in comparison.
Yeah, I remember that. I just thought I overheard an interview somewhere where somebody was mentioning that initially Thief, the Dark Project, did have loading screens, and they found a way to eliminate them. Because other
might be.
contemporary games like Half-Life have so many loading screens, right?
Oh yeah, that is actually because I said that at the beginning. Like Half-Life, I think it came out in '98, and
It
I'm
did,
pretty
yeah. I think it
yeah.
came out earlier. I think it came out earlier in '98. I think I want to say it came out in the summer.
Because I have the feeling that I already knew of Half-Life, and that is why I was comparing the reflection, on the weapon, and that was a thing. Like in Half-Life, it was really annoying after playing Thief. Then you really recognized that, like, wow, all those loading times. It was just one room, and in Thief you have like a huge huge area, and there's nothing. Of course, the game looks, I don't know. Half-Life looked a bit better, I guess, but
So this is interesting. I didn't think of this, but yeah, Half-Life came out in North America. It came out very shortly before Thief, around a couple weeks.
November, wasn't it?
Yeah, November. But I think in Europe, which is obviously where you would have played the game, Alex, they came out. I think Thief didn't come out right away, but I think Half-Life had a pretty much almost day and date North America and Europe. So that's interesting.
yeah, maybe my memory is a bit blurry, or maybe I played Half-Life later, or what. Yeah, but I did some comparisons to something, and I thought it was Half-Life because it was the obvious one. But yeah, the game just impressed me. But yeah, but the huge world is, or the huge worlds. they are still, in my opinion, are still impressive today. Like how
Absolutely
interconnected they are and huge. And
incredible. It really is incredible. Like games still have not caught up. I mean, they're just kind of now catching up with like sort of the utilization of SSDs and stuff like that. But I mean, you look at a level like SoulForge. I mean, that level is just insane, like gigantic, like just level, like layer after layer to that level, and
It's
the
a
fact that
puzzle.
it's a huge puzzle and there's
it's a
so many
mess.
rooms. I mean, it's a mess, but I mean, from a purely not from a design standpoint,
Yeah.
but from a technical standpoint, the fact that that can all load into one level with no screens at all is, yeah,
From
like it's so
2001.
mind blowing. Yeah, from the from
2000s.
yeah, from like 20 years ago. I mean, that's crazy. So, that was one of the things that struck me. And another thing is, again, going back to what Ridnar, I really hope I'm saying that right, man. What he said is like Thief commits to stealth, and I think a lot of the Thief successors. I'm interested to see what you guys have to say about this, but a lot of the Thief sort of successors, stealth is it's kind of an option. It's there,
It's
it's
an
not.
afterthought.
It's an afterthought, and it's obvious. A game like Dishonored or something where you can shoot gusts of air and you can teleport, and it's like you can do all this crazy stuff. You can light people on fire and all these things like that. And it's like Thief is so was so refreshing to me because it committed, it's committed almost fully to stealth, experimentation within stealth. But that's another thing that struck me because I think a lot of games nowadays are too cowardly to commit to something like stealth because they're afraid that they're not going to
They don't want to alienate players.
yeah, exactly. They don't want to alienate players. They want to reach a wide audience. And Thief, I think, kind of to me, the thing that was so interesting is that Thief was kind of like, this is the game, this is what it is. Like
And
it's
you
an
see how
intelligent.
successful it was.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're in or you're not in, basically. Is
Yeah,
like
it wasn't very successful, sadly, but
The wider the audience you reach, the fewer people in that audience you please.
yeah, I would
of-
go along with that. Yeah.
it depends. I don't know. I think younger audiences. I think it's a different generation of players, and they are used to that, and they want that. Things change. Back in the days, I think it was different. But we are already in the gameplay area, and I think that is my statement for Thief. What is the best part in the gameplay? That you can have different ways of playing it. You can play it the way you want. You can make your own rules. And of course, this happened like after people maybe got a bit bored by the standard difficulties and whatever. So they made up like their ghosting and supreme ghosting rules. And you can choose like me, like knock everybody out because different players. And that is another thing because actually Thief can please very different kinds of personalities and players because you can choose how you want to play. I choose like, okay, I'm interested in the stories and the rooms. I just want to check out everything undisturbed. So I knock everybody out first, and then I check all the rooms and look for hidden switches, no matter what. Because like if a guard would run around in that area, I would be nervous and annoyed. And other players really get the thrill out of that situation and like that idea of you are the ghost thief, you get into that building and you get out of that building and nobody has noticed you. Of course, you take like a lot of reloading with what the game gives you, but still, you get that feeling like I made it, like I went through that level, and that is actually one thing. Where they weren't very consistent, in my opinion, in telling what Garrett does. Like sometimes he is shown as the guy, as the supreme ghoster, like he gets in and out and nobody noticed him. But sometimes, he's shown like, yeah, the guy who knocks everybody out is in his way, So, yeah, they are not very consistent in that. But maybe on the same way they gave players the idea of both kind of play styles. I don't know.
Well, apparently he knows where to hit people in order to give them amnesia so they don't remember being knocked out either.
No, they know. There are references. I think it's in the fan missions, but still, it's interesting. Like when does fan mission stuff become lore, in your head? And
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
but that's another story. But let's go for the gameplay. Like
Oh,
yeah,
I was
what
gonna piggyback off that real quick. What you said about knocking out and them having amnesia. I love that they don't get back up. I hate
Oh
stealth games.
yeah.
I mean, it's like the guards get back up, and there's plenty of them. Like I know it's like realistic, and this gets into a whole nother discussion, but sometimes you have to sacrifice realism for fun. Games should be fun. I think Thief does a brilliant job of that. You know what I mean? Like if the guards got up in Thief, I think the game would be significantly less fun for me
And
personally.
and you can just imagine that was what I always thought, and I know from a podcast I listened to. They were covering Thief one day, and they were having the same thoughts. Like, hey, you put all the knocked out guards into one room, and then you leave the place because your job is done at some time. And then you imagine like they are waking up, and they are in
In a
that
pile.
pile of
Yeah.
guards.
They're all
No,
there's
what
12 people locked in a broom closet and they're all waking
must
up
have
at the
been
same
rats.
time. I like I think it's Craig's Cleft, but I like the line where the guard hears you but he doesn't know you're there and he goes, a plague on these rats. I love that one. But I digress.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention when we were in the lore thing. Sorry. What I really liked is when you play the Thieves Guild, that the thieves, and of course they know you because they are part of the same underworld your underground, they you both are living in. When they see you, they address you with your name.
I know, I
Hey
love that.
guys, it's Garrett,
Yeah.
and that's so amazing. Like, and
It is a nice little touch.
and it adds so much to the lore. Just that one little thing that they recorded those lines for that mission or for
Yes.
that characters. Let's say.
Yeah, Thief does the little things right, I would say, to put my thoughts on it succinctly. It does the little things so right, and that's one of them, definitely.
But to the gameplay, what is your? I just told everybody that, or people know that I play the original intended play style. What is your preferred way of playing Thief?
I'm a blackjacker. I like to explore.
You're my buddy.
I like to knock everyone out and explore as I go along, and eliminate guards as I come across them, so they don't come back at me later. I don't want anyone to bite me in the butt while I'm reading.
And you, Jake?
I'm pretty much
Could you repeat
a
that?
similar
Sorry, I
way.
didn't
I
get
like to
that.
knock out the guards. I Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we've had some good luck so far, but some occasional lag. But no, I'm the same way. I like to knock out guards. I pretty much blackjack everybody. I'm not gonna front and say that I go through the entire game, ghosting everybody possible. Like, no, that's not me. I like to explore. I love exploration in games. So I love to do that. Like what you said, I'm basically almost the same as you, Seth. I like to knock out cards, look for loots, be feeling around those bookcases,
Oh
looking for
yeah.
that book that you have to pull to open up the wall, which I never get tired of that. Like I love that. Thief does that. Like, got to find the hidden book or what have you to activate the fireplace or something like that. So I'm a knock out all the guards, look around the level, and I was just gonna say to in terms of the gameplay, I love that gadgets are not given all at once. I love that the game kind of sprinkles them out throughout the game. That to me is so cool.
Yeah, that's yeah. Sorry, I'm just looking over
They don't just say, "Oh, here's flash bombs."
Alex, are you a procedural blackjacker? Like, do you blackjack everyone first and loot second, or do you go room by room?
I go area by area, I would say.
Gotcha.
Like I think that's because it's the most efficient thing, to get rid of the obstacles and then, check out it depends how big it is. Maybe it's just the level of the building or, just that area but still I'm always aware of maybe there's someone coming, especially in Thief 1. I just recognized in my playthrough that there are a lot of guards with enormous routes they take. And sometimes you are surprised by someone because you thought, okay, I knocked out the 6 guards that are already here in that one room or like that, and then there's another one coming 5 minutes later. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
but in general, yeah, I like it to have, I like it quiet, and to do my thing, and
I go floor by floor if it's like a mansion type like heist mission. I'll be like, all right, I'm gonna clear out the first floor, knock out the guards, then I'm gonna look around for loot, and then we're gonna make our way to the second floor. But like you said, Alex, it depends on the mission too.
And I think I just figured out why Thief 2 is more to my taste. That's because of in Thief 1 you have a lot of levels, and yeah, people love the Thief 1 level design, but they are more like a maze and less structures in very often. So it's harder, to overlook the area and get a feeling for it. And so the way of progress we seem to do, isn't really fitting to those levels, because they are like caves or like supernatural stuff where you never have a real feeling for, how does this thing look? Even if you haven't seen everything in a normal building, you get a feeling for, how big is it,
Exactly.
and where
Exactly.
are the borders of the building and stuff. And I think this suits our playstyle more.
I completely agree. Completely agree. Yeah, it's hard when you play a mission like Save the Lost City and you're like, all right, now I'm gonna clear out the pigeon part of the level. You know what I mean? Whereas you play a mission like I was just playing shipping and receiving the other day, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna clear out like warehouse A, and I'm gonna like clear out all the guards so I can loot all the shipping containers and stuff like that, and then I'm gonna move on to warehouse B. So it fits my play style better. Like almost like you said verbatim, Alex. It's like I can like kind of compartmentalize like the parts of the level that I want to kind of clear and then beat.
That's actually because I was just thinking of the same level, because I think this is a perfect example of this. Like, because you have those different storage areas, like with the big gates, and they, so you have very um, separated areas, and this, of course, suits to this type of playing because it gives you some security. Like, okay, there's maybe just that one entrance, and so I can be safe here if I knocked everybody out and I checked in front of the building, like if there's no guard anymore, and so you can take your time and check everything out. But on the same level, I can totally understand like the feeling of how satisfying it must be if you do this without knocking anybody out, like hey, I did that and nobody noticed. I can totally see like the satisfaction you get from that.
I have kind of a middle road where I go room by room and I sort of like loot and blackjack cards as I go. And one of the things that I like about Thief One that you touched on is like those long routes resulted in a lot of times where I'd blackjack what I thought was the only guard patrolling an area. And then while I was busy hiding the body or looting the room, another guard would walk in. So I always enjoyed those like sort of organic feeling moments where I messed up and like I'm sort of caught in the act.
Yeah, it's a different point of view on that. I had the same in Thief 1, like where I was like, oh, still someone here, and somehow it's realistic that they have bigger routes that they walk. And as you said, yeah, what you just described is actually like, okay, I messed up. I wasn't aware enough of my surroundings and stuff. So it can be seen as a good thing as well. But
I think
I like to handle it as it
Oh,
comes,
I'm sorry.
right? Like that's okay. I'll often fight the guard that discovers me instead of reloading or whatever.
that's
I
not the intended way. You can do that.
I know it's unpopular, but it's what I like to do.
No, I'm just kidding.
Feels
I
organic.
I was gonna say to go along to piggyback off what you said, Alex, about how the guards in Thief Gold seem to have longer routes. I think that's another like I was saying earlier, like that balance between like realism and fun. Because like yeah, like it's probably not realistic that a guard's like just gonna walk up and down like a very narrow path and then turn right around. But like that's more fun, than having all these like having like 50 guards that are like taking these super long patrol routes and they're just going through the entire level. Like, like that's probably more realistic, but I don't think it's as fun.
And that adds to I don't know who of you said that, but it's like a puzzle game. And in a puzzle game, if you just have a basic puzzle game where you on your phone or whatever, and there are things that move, they mostly move in a very particular, easy, simple way.
Yeah, the
And
blocks
and
are always falling down in Tetris. It's not like the block is like, oh, now we're going up now, So
right, and so here I think this adds to the puzzle because it's more reliable, because okay, this I see this area, I see this puzzle, and it's I think it's a very good way. I think Stealth Dogs, great YouTube channel, we had him as a guest as well. He I think dissected stealth games as puzzle games. Like there are all those different mechanics and objects in the room, and some of you can use for your advantage, others are obstacles, and every new room or every new area or level or whatever is a new puzzle that you have to solve in your most satisfying way, or what the game tells you to do, or what the outcome should be, and you have to figure it out. And I think the easier to overlook guard routes are more contributing to that. But on the other hand, of course, people like maybe the puzzles, but they love this element of possible surprise and not feeling safe. And this is a feeling, and this adds. If you feel in a media, then this gets personal, so you are invested. And that's what we said. Like, it has so many ways of playing it for different personal preferences. That's amazing, and just in what seems to be a simple game.
Well, that's very true, and I think that goes along with what Platonia said. Is that like it's a game? He said it's a game that's built on like interconnected different factors and systems. Like it's a systems-driven game, so to speak. It's not a designer-driven game. Like you have these systems like light and shadows, like sound propagation, and all these things, and physics. With how far the arrows travel and things like that. And then that's very much like a puzzle game, right? Because puzzle games are also like systems-driven. They're not really designer driven. They're not like showing you like, okay, like here's the next thing, and like we designed it so that it's like this cinematic thing that you go through in a certain way. So I just to kind of reinforce what you're saying, like it is a very similar design in a way to puzzle games.
And I think where you just mentioned that, for example, when you beat the trickster, I think this is one of the weakest moments in the whole game because you're just watching.
I agree. Yeah.
You do your last action, and it's very exciting. The action is very exciting that you do. You like switch the eye, and it makes sense in every way. And it's you are close to that god or whatever he is, and then you're watching.
Yeah, I
Like
completely agree. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too far off into the missions specifically, but just to go on a little bit, I think that is kind of why I agree with you. I think that's why kind of Maw is a little bit weak, and some of those later missions are weak because they are less systems driven and they are more like design driven. They're more like, okay, watch this, or this is a cool moment that we're setting up for you, rather it being like, okay, this is Garrett, he's doing his thing, the systems, the guards, how everything works, like get to it. Ma is very like,
the whole level is just the opposite of what a preferred thief level is to the player. It's just a tunnel,
Ma is linear. Yeah.
yes, it's a straight, it's literally a straight path, for the most part. It's literally, you go from one side to the other, there's no, it's a huge kind of, I don't want to say betrayal because that sounds really dramatic, but it's a kind of it's a huge take back kind of everything that you've been learning so far.
And that's actually the worst thing you can do, because in the final level, you want your skills that you learned over the whole
payoff.
game. And I think I don't like I missed the name, Thief 2 final mission,
Sabotage at
Soulforge.
Soulforge, right? This is actually you need all your skills that you learned over the game or over the two games in best, but yeah, it's the into the more you saw that they had a lot of fun designing it, and I think it has great moments like when you go down that ice lane and at the end there are those ice sparks. And
oh yeah, the visuals are awesome.
And yeah, but they had fun, and it adds. It's like a little, like they say, like, hey, here's a roller coaster at the end, but it doesn't really work to satisfaction.
You definitely want that final mission to be like you guys said, like you want it to be an accumulation of all the skills you learned so far. I think Maw would have worked better had say it been sort of some sort of like, I mean, I don't know how you would have done it, but having it be like a mission before the final mission in a way, like maybe you do the Maw and then there's like another mission after you sort of get to the trickster,
Yeah,
his final area.
his
His
lair is
lair,
like a mission.
exactly.
Yeah.
His lair is like much bigger and it's more of like a fully fleshed out level.
I think if it felt more like a hub with interconnected areas, it would have been very different than the tunnel with a series of different events along the way.
I think it would have been great if, like, before Into the Maw would be a mission where you travel to this area, like maybe an underground passage or whatever you're doing, which is a fully level. And then you enter that tunnel or the portal, in best case. And then you start Into the Maw, like as you said, like just like that transportation route to the final level. Yeah, that would have been amazing, I think. And
So
you couldn't buy gadgets between the missions. Like this would add to the difficulty and
so
the
maybe like
tension.
an area like a limbo kind of between. So like instead of going to the portal and getting right to the maw, you maybe go to like another area that's like sort of the in between. Excuse
Yeah,
me, the in between.
that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be. I think that would have been a lot better too.
Yeah. So please, Looking Glass, give us a patch.
Yes, I revive Looking Glass. Start work again on Thief 2 Gold, and fix Mob Chaos.
Yeah, and please, guys from the community, you can write some lines for Stephen Russell and Daniel, and they will record them. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, that just reminded me of something. Kind of, I love the fact. Like some people might hate this. I love the fact that the developers are some of the voice actors. I know that was probably out of necessity, but I think
That
it adds.
happens in so many games.
Back in the days, especially, but the difference here is that they were actually talented.
Yes. Well, and the thing too is it adds so much to it because they they feel like real people because they are real people. They're not actors. They're acting, but they're not actors.
That's what I just yesterday I talked to Daniel Thron, and I was telling him, like, I just did the replay of Thief 1, and I said it's so strange to hear him now in the game, because now he became human to me, and and suddenly it's really strange to listen to him, like, because suddenly you feel like you know that person in some way, and yeah, it always kicks me out when he's talking.
Yeah, I mean it's refreshing because like now every game has professional voice acting and not knocking the job that professional actors do, but it adds a sort of another layer I think of believability because not everyone's like a theatrical trained actor. They're just regular game designers like Dan and um some of the other ones as well, and like Terry and Eric I think is in the game too, and I mean that to me is just so awesome because they feel like real people. They don't, a thief like like a keeper shouldn't sound like a Shakespearean actor. He should just sound like a strange, bizarre keeper.
Especially the voices of the servants, or let's say civilian people. I think they are done very well. I think they just have the woman. I think it's just always one voice, the civilian woman.
I think
But
so too.
and then the servant voice, I think also. But they add so much, and it doesn't. It's not disturbing me in a way. It's like, mostly you have Benny and the Daniel guy, in conversations in Thief 1, for example, like it's always the same guys, but it fits. But yeah, I think the voices of the civilians are done very well as well. Like the woman's voice, like she's pretty high, but she adds some, I don't know, some theatrical note to it, but it's still very believable.
They're very different than the other characters, right? They're timid and they're afraid of Garrett, whereas the guards are aggressive.
And that's again what we said at the beginning, that the different parties, and let's see the civilians or servants as a party, they sound different. They then the Hammerites, then the pagans, then the guards. I don't know. I think this was by choice.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a I don't know. Bring back developer voice acting. That's all I have to say.
No.
Bring it back. Do it.
No.
Okay.
Then do your
We
own
won't.
game, please.
We won't.
No, but yeah, they were lucky that they had talent. But again, that's maybe adds to what I said about the characteristics of people that like to play Thief. Maybe it's because the game was made by people that are from the same characteristics, like very creative guys, very deep thinking people, but maybe also a bit, I don't know, depressed or whatever. I don't know, but you know, it adds to it adds up.
I agree. Yeah, it's
Gives it a flavor.
yes. Very
Yeah.
good point.
So yeah, we missed so many quotes or comments from the community. What I also like as a comment, and because we are in the gameplay side, it's from Blue Jay, also from YouTube. And he said, I love being able to defeat an enemy with zero force and without them even knowing you were there. I don't exactly follow ghosting rules 100%, but I like being a phantom or a spirit like entity who does his job so well that enemies think the story of Garrett can't be real. And that's what I think I'd already described that earlier. Like, that's it, like the feeling of overcoming the others, like you out tricked them, or what do you say? Like, you outsmarted them. That's
Yes. Yeah, same. Me too. I'm with Blue Jay. I'm with you 100%, man. I pretty much feel the same. I like that feeling of kind of being a ghost, not a ghost, but like a specter that is in and out and
You're
manipulates
the,
the
s-
environment.
you're the smartest guy in the room, and nobody knows you're there.
Exactly. Great. That's a great point.
and then there was some comment that was, in my opinion, touching. It was from Lee Seymour, and he was telling us on Twitter that Thief gave me a way as a kid to cope with my father's death, a structured, holistic world to explore, which granted me a sense of control over frightening things. It still helps me feel grounded 20 years later, especially during the pandemic. And Stephen, the voice is so soothing, he says. First of all, Lee, thanks for that personal comment and view on your personal feelings. But
Yeah,
is
man.
it
Thanks for sharing. That's really touching to read too. How much it means to you.
so? I think that's also a thing. Like thief is some. Do you say it on English like escapism?
Escapism, yeah.
Escapism, yeah.
Escapism, and this is also a thing. Like you can really dive into this world, and especially, and I'm so grateful that we still have fan missions around. Like and when like it's by certain authors, you're like, oh,
You know what you're
I'm
in
in for a
for.
treat, and this will be great, and yeah, and then you can spend hours in something that really sucks you in, and I can imagine like Lee just describes it, like, okay, he really had a big loss, like his father's death, and like Thief. I really like that he says he has control over frightening things. So this and this goes for games in general. Like they can help you in a certain way. Of course, they can do bad things to you as well, like isolation or whatever, but or addiction. But on the other hand, they can provide you, as he says, like you have control over certain things.
Yeah, it's
But you don't have real life threats. Like you can reload, you can master something and do things that you're not able to in the real world, and try it out. What happens if.
Yeah, sometimes it's nice to have that sort of break from the real world, especially I'm sure everybody can relate with how the last year or two has been. It's nice to have like a world that you can escape to, and that goes along with what we were saying earlier about the world being so believable. Thief is a game where you can put your headphones on and you know um, sit in front of your keyboard and feel like you're really somewhere else for however long you play, for an hour or two, or um, so I mean I think that's it's very good Very good comment. Very good. Very touching. And I agree that the game is super immersive and does give you that sense of control.
Thief is like that really interesting friend that takes you on dates to all sorts of like different places.
That's well said.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Let's go to this spot. It's crazy. You'll never see anything like it. It's like, yeah, I'm in.
And and that is Aaron or Aaron. It's Ehren. It was also on Twitter, and he said, and I like the I will point the what he says. Atmosphere, simplicity, distinction. There's nothing else like Thief on the market 20 years later. Something that toes the line between horror, noir, and fantasy. Something that is so easy to pick up and play. I don't know if it is easy to pick up and play. I think it again depends on what type of character you are and
Yeah, I mean, are you guys like me? Do you wait till it's nighttime outside and like turn off the lights and play Thief? Because that's definitely what I do.
I play it whenever I want to.
All day, every day.
Oh man, I can't play it during the day because it's so dark.
I have, just because I play Thief a lot, my desktop background is black. It has a little Batman silhouette, but in general it's black and dark, and my whole Windows is dark. Like everything is dark and black. And because like if you play Thief on your main monitor and then the other one is on the right, and of course maybe I want to have Discord on, but I don't want the bright light from the side, so I prepare my whole system for it being black. And I got so used to it that on my phone, I like my interfaces being black.
I do that too. I have dark theme for everything. Thanks, Thief.
Saves energy.
My desktop background for a good long while was the Metal Age cover art, so I was definitely I was in there with you. I was
such a beautiful thing.
Well, I just wanted to say too, to Aaron's comment, thank you for writing in, man. First off, I sort of disagree with Thief being easy to pick up and play. I'm kind of with you, Alex, but I think it also depends on what kind of gamer you are, right? So if you started with PC gaming in the early 90s or maybe even the 80s, I think that Thief probably is much more intuitive than say like the first System Shock game. But I think if you are more of a new school gamer, let's say, or a gamer that started on console or moved from console to PC, I think that Thief is probably not going to be so easy to pick up and play because it does have, especially the first game, right? You know this, Alex, you just played through it. Has that hallmarks of 90s level design, right? Like getting lost and maze-like levels and
ugly textures.
Oh, I love the ugly textures.
Oh, sometimes it's really ugly, the game. Where
the correct one kills me.
Nah, that's okay. But some of the walls were like, really, guys, couldn't you find a better texture for this rock wall? Like, it repeats itself. It really looks like someone took a poster, and copied it many times, and then he just blasted it over the place. Like, yeah.
The funny thing about that statement is I think a lot of the texture sources for Thief 1 were from architectural books.
Yep. Yeah, I've seen that. They used some pictures and
yeah.
I mean a lot of textures, and I mean you work in game design, you said, right, Seth? I mean, that a lot of like the Elder Scrolls, I know, for example, I know they went places and took pictures of buildings. I know a lot of games do that, right? Where they'll take pictures or they'll use books or
yeah, you always need good reference material.
It makes sense if you can, properly reflect them in the game, but not with I don't know what solution they use, but sometimes really ugly. But on the other hand, it's like the charm.
Yeah, they're definitely a warm feeling for me.
And I think too, if you didn't have these ugly textures, would maybe the game have enough resources devoted to things like light and shadows and sound propagation and things like that? Like if they would have time with sort of making more detailed textures, maybe they wouldn't have had time to make the sound and the lighting and the AI and the level design so great. So maybe it's a trade-off.
I think it adds to the surrealism. It lends itself to that feeling of otherness and not quite being able to place yourself.
Yeah, because you can't you don't Because when I play Thief, and you guys feel free to tell me how you feel, but I never play Thief, and I never go like, oh, this reminds me of this place, or it reminds me of this country or this time period.
It's a completely different
all
place.
it's all these different sources that sometimes feel familiar, but it's nothing where you can go, oh, this is Rome, or this is whatever. So I agree with you there, Seth. I mean, there is a sort of sense of surrealism that kind of keeps you from nailing down exactly what you're looking at.
Where we were just talking about like the textures and stuff, Galadin or Jaladin, or I don't know how to spell it, but she's
I like Jaladine. That sounds awesome.
yeah, and she's a streamer and a supporter of the show. So greetings to her. She says, for me, it has always been the art, not only as in visual art or the design, but the general concept of the game and everything that makes it what it is. And unique lore, aesthetics, the storytelling, the music, which I love with passion, the characters is tremendously unique. Yeah. Thanks for that comment. And yes, the textures are unique. But
yes, thank you for writing in, and hope everything is well with you, and thank you for supporting the show
and doing Thief streams.
Doing Thief streams in beautiful Argentina.
Yeah, and they have to have terrible internet over there, because half of her tweets are like, "Oh, sorry guys, today it won't work because my internet is not working," and stuff like that. But yeah, when she does, it's nice to watch her.
I guess that brings me back to Aaron's comment about Thief being easy to play. Maybe they mean that Thief is easy to come back to. The conventions are understood, right? The world is understood.
That's a good point. That's a good view of it. Yeah, it's easy. You never have to be like, all right, well, I got to prepare to get back into Thief. I got to it's like a bicycle, right? You pick it back up and you know exactly how to ride it.
You always know what you're going to be expected to do in Thief.
Yeah. Yeah, it's because the gameplay in general and the goal is pretty simple and easy to pick up, yeah. But I think to really pick up Thief and dive into, you need, as I said, like when I was a child, I was wondering like what really got me hooked, because I was just scared and I didn't get so many things at the beginning. So it wasn't easy for me to pick it up. It took me really long. It took me years to really get into Thief and know what's going on and how to play it. But because I know that time is limited for Seth a bit, I have a controversial statement from Bordenka. It was also over Twitter, and I'm really happy that he answered, because it's something I didn't really expect. Because when we think of Thief, like, and we want to talk about it,
we're usually talking Thief 1 and Thief 2.
Yeah, and a Thief, and a Thief, and I think Thief 3 is like the
third wheel.
The third wheel that everybody likes. He's not as interesting as the other two, but he's nice to have him around. But Bordenka says, hello. Of course, I have to read everything because he starts very nice. Glad to interact with such an amazing team as you guys. Thank you. I think he means you two.
I mean, he anticipated us and how amazing that we are.
Yeah, I think because I don't know what he meant about Next, Psychosis, and me. By the way, one thing, before I go deeper into the comment, yes, Psychosis isn't part. He's still part of our team, but he will not appear so soon. But Next is still with us, but he is on vacation, and yeah, he should enjoy himself. So don't worry, one of them is still there. But Bordenka, glad to interact with such an amazing team as you guys. If we're talking about the reboot, and I was like, what? Then I come back to it because it was my first PS4 game, so I have weird nostalgic attachment to it. It's interesting, like PS4 nostalgia, back in the days when PS4 was a thing.
We're so old that we're like, what are you talking about?
PS1.
That was like that was PS4 that came out 2 days ago. But
I feel like I have to get out my N64 now.
Yeah, it must be better because it's 64, not just 4. Um, the reboot is also my guilty pleasure. The good parts about are pleasant enough to make a good evening. It's also in my nature to roast any kind of media, especially if I see a potential in it for even enjoy it. Thief 2014 had a lot of potential. Imagining how things could play out if the team has been more focused adds a lot to each mission. If we're talking about the original trilogy, though, then I have to admit I haven't come back to any of the games properly. I joined the community just about a year and a half ago, so I'm still digesting the experience I have so far. So,
My friend, play some fan missions.
it's a strange comment. First of all, thank you, because as I said, I think this is a totally different view on Thief. He says he prefers the game and he has nostalgic attachment to it, and then like he says, like it's kind of defending the game, like what could have been. It's not like, hey, it's a great game. It's just like, yeah, I play a game and I see its potential. But I have to admit, I see it the same way. I had fun with it, but
I think that as an entry point to the series, it's not the worst entry point because it does teach you a lot of the conventions. I think the trouble is working backwards from something made with the production standard of Thief 4.
yeah, exactly. I think too. Kind of giving him a hard time, playfully so. And thank you for your comment, man. We don't know how old. I mean, he might be. Might have PS4 might have been first console. Not sure. But hey, I mean, anytime you can jump into the series, I think is good. And I think you're still a valued member of the community, even if you are completely wrong. No, I'm just kidding.
well, I was wondering, like, where is this going, right?
No, but what I was gonna say was lost my train of
like
thought.
he's like it sounds like like he's
Oh.
disabled, like, but you can still you're still
Yeah, exactly. We're kind of condescending him, like you're wrong, but we still like you. No, completely value,
And I
completely
thought I have a strange humor,
no,
but
completely value what you're saying, and I really like you said, and I'm kind of this way too. You said that you kind of like to roast things that you like. You kind of like to roast your sacred cows, so to speak, and I really like that, and I try to do that too. And, sort of
and
look
and,
at it. No, I don't know. I
and
think it's easier to make fun of. For me, it's easier to make fun of things and to kind of point out the flaws and things that you love and
you know
enjoy.
we know that you can't do the same things as people with functioning legs, but it's still nice. No, but I think I have to admit I totally go along with him because I liked Thief 2014, because this is the same thing. I saw the potential.
So interest of full disclosure, I've never played Thief 2014, but I was a huge fan. Thief 2014 was made by Eidos Montreal, and they made Deus Ex Human Revolution, which I did play when it came out, and I was a mega fan of that game. So even before I had played Thief: The Dark Project or Thief Gold and Thief 2, I was anticipating Thief 2014 not because of Thief, but because of Deus Ex in a strange
Did you
way.
play the original Deus Ex game?
I did actually. I played Deus Ex not when it came out, but I played it before Human Revolution came out.
Hold on, guys. I have to go reinstall Deus Ex.
That's every time it's mentioned,
Go
someone will
go for the
reinstall.
Steam version. There's a modded version. You
Yes.
can
New Vision?
yeah, right.
Yes, amazing game. But so I had a different perspective on Thief 2014. I was like, oh man, I really love Deus Ex Human Revolution, and I really like the first Deus Ex, and I was like, man, I'm looking forward to this game because I was more interested in Eidos Montreal and their previous work, and then I came to Thief later. So for me, like just seeing like when the game came out and seeing how it kind of, from everybody's reaction and how sort of disappointing it was, I might want to just like steer clear of this. And
They're pretty far removed from one another, Human Revolution
yeah,
and Thief 4.
yeah, that's the thing, is that like I know that they're not completely the same. They have some similarities, right? But Deus Ex obviously you have it's cyberpunk and you have guns and
that small open worlds.
yeah. So
That's the thing that's different.
But just from a pure quality standpoint, I was like, man, I was like, Human Revolution, so amazing. And I was really like looking forward to Thief. At that time, I think I had been aware of it, but I didn't play the original.
That was the huge disappointment. Like I was, after
I think everyone was looking forward to
Human
Thief
Revolution was like, okay, they found a way to, we ignore the second Deus Ex game, Invisible War. This doesn't exist. That's the thing. Thief Deadly Shadows, made by the same team as Deus Ex Invisible War. Thief was the better game.
I agree.
And Deus Ex was like Thief 2014 to Thief. And now I was like, oh, they made Deus Ex Human Revolution, which was like, I don't want to say a compromise, but a good way to combine to invite old players and new players. Of course, old players always have to nag about things, but still, they found a good way. And I was so full of hope, like, oh, and they are doing the new Thief game. So I was full of anticipation that this will be good because they did it with Deus Ex. But yeah, they failed in a lot of ways, and I don't want to go into detail except they totally ignored like hammer rights or it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I
1,000% agree with you what you said, Alex, because Deus Ex 3, not to get too much into a Deus Ex discussion, but it does a great job of, it's the soft reboot, right? Like it's acknowledges some events from its past. There's, characters like Bob Page appears, and there's references to things that are just going to come later. But it's also one of those entries that you can, pick up and have never played the first game, and it is.
Well, I think
similar in
something
gameplay, but also kind of a reform. Sorry, go ahead, Seth.
That's okay. I think something that you would notice is that if you look at the point at which sequels become unpredictable in gaming, it's when sequels began to go cross-platform. For example, Thief 3 was the first Thief title made for a console, and it had a lot of departures from the design because it was being designed for a console audience, right? It needed to obey the conventions of that system.
And the
same with
technology.
Invisible. Yes,
Fit
same with
on the
Invisible
Xbox
War.
controller with the very low specs compared to what a high-end PC can offer.
And I think that when sequels began to go cross-platform, they began to appeal to the wrong audience, right? They were originally designed for one audience, and now they're trying to take the franchise and appeal to a different audience.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. I'm so with you. It's like, I always think of it as like, why are you trying to appeal to these people that are never going to like the game? You know what I mean? Like, it's this terrible compromise where it's like old fans like us, or you guys, I should say, but, I'm an appreciator of the old games, or, fans of the older games, I should say. We are not going to like the new stuff because, like you said, Alex, you're throwing out things like Hamrites and Pagans, and you're kind of, in a way, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to a lot of the lore and the gameplay. And then new players aren't going to be interested because they're going to feel like this is an entry to a franchise that I've never played before, even if it is a soft reboot or a reboot.
And they have the feeling they're missing out something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's this compromise, I think, and I think, I'm not sure which one of you said it earlier, but it's a great point. It's like when you try to cast this like wide net, and you just said, Seth, about going multi-platform. It's like when you try to appeal to everybody, sometimes you can end up appealing to nobody. I think that was a lot of the case.
But one thing I want to say is, and I think we to one of you guys, I said that in a personal conversation a week ago. I think you can never do justice to Thief. You could never recreate a Thief that satisfies people because I think Thief is a game of its time and its mechanics, and the very blocky architecture and everything works to a certain way. The levels are very easy to read because they are so simple and empty, and the architecture is very clear because of the low polys. And I think if you would want to transfer this with a modern game engine and some things you would expect from a modern game, I think this wouldn't work because the levels are not as easy to read. The guards are
Can
not
I throw something out there though?
Yeah.
There's a tech demo on YouTube by a game developer called Michael Moore, and like Mohre, I believe, and they have done something that is quite modern in design, but very akin to Thief and very readable. And I think you would be surprised by what opportunities are out there now that the technology has changed for like what a Thief reboot might look like.
Um, what is it called?
I can't remember the name. I remember the name of the YouTube channel. It's Michael Moore. I will find it and give you the details so you can put it under the description.
Yeah, right. And but you don't mean the Delight,
I don't think so.
because there's also the Delight demo.
No, it's not
the-
that.
yeah, which kind of adds to it. But that's what I want to say is, yeah, you can try to recreate the gameplay, but then, in my opinion, there's like, it doesn't seem believable because of the kind of realistic graphics, but then everything is pretty blocky. And Thief,
Yeah.
of course, wanted to look as realistic as possible the way it could at its time. So
Yeah, I'm with you, Alex. I think that I love late 90s, early 2000s like PC type graphics because like you said, I love the blocky design because it is so easy to follow. I feel like with newer games sometimes like there's all this bloom and there's all these god rays and there's all these things going on where I'm like I don't know where to go because the
no,
screen is just so filled with like ray tracing and
I don't want to. No. I would love to have a Thief with modern graphics. You know, I would love to have that. But I think that the way the Thief gameplay was fun doesn't work with the modern graphics because, you know, it doesn't work. You know,
yeah, I agree.
because you would always have like, okay, now I have this amazing technologies and I see like all the ray tracing and stuff, but then I have this blocky world that really doesn't seem to be believable. But in the old graphics of Thief, of course, you know, there have to be compromises, and so it's more believable because it is what it is, you know, and that, I think that's a big. You cannot recreate the Thief feeling, in my opinion, to a to a to a way that satisfies you the way Thief did back in the days. Of course, there's nostalgia. Of course, there's like, yeah, all the personal feelings. But it's like the System Shock reboot they do now. You know, they have those, you know, this really pixel textures that they try to, to recreate the original look. But on the
Yeah.
same way, they have that modern lighting, and it doesn't fit, in my
I agree.
opinion.
I agree. I don't want to get too into it. I'm a huge System Shock fan as well. Yeah, it just doesn't work. And I'm with you. I'm of the opinion, I mean, this might be a more extreme position. I don't want Thief, the original games remade, maybe updated so that it has better compatibility, that people don't have to hunt down things like New Dark and, G-Fix and stuff like that, or Taffer Patcher, whatever. But I would never want to see the game remade because I think that for what you said, for that reason, I think that there's going to be things lost in translation if you make a full ground remake.
Yeah, imagine like they would recreate like the cutscenes that are really, you see that they were limited in the way they could do things, but on the other hand, this gives it a very unique look, like, the rough animations but on the same the art that is amazing, and you could say like, okay, this could be an art decision, and then maybe they would recreate that with in-game graphics, and it would lose its charm and all its atmosphere, and yeah. So I don't know.
Could you imagine like a developer now going like, yeah, like we're gonna hand paint all the cutscenes, and we're gonna have a game that doesn't have like a compass or stuff like or I should say a way marker, not a compass, because the game does have a compass, but
Yeah, right.
a way marker or something like that. Like Thief now would be like, find the treasure, and it's like a big floating arrow in the middle of the screen that shows you exactly where the treasure is. You know what I mean?
And a non-interactive map,
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah. That's. But on the other hand, I think people sometimes say like, yeah, the industry just reacts to what players want. No, I think the industry created what players want. And they got dumber and dumber, more easy and but yeah, that's part of development. Like we said with the hemorrhoids, it's not good for the environment, but this is progression. and or what we face today in our world. Like it's not good with all the cars and planes, but it's progression in some way. And at one point,
You
it doesn't work anymore.
You just can't take a chance now like you could back then, right? I mean, I'm sure like the developers can speak to this, but team's pretty small, I know, and I mean budgets are a lot smaller. Whereas nowadays, like games are like $100 million or $200 million or more. So it's like
Yeah, and you have
have to get that
stakeholders.
return on investment. Yeah, like you want that return on investment. So that's when you get things like microtransactions. I mean, Thief. Imagine they remade Thief. It's like, put in your credit card to get more loot so that you can buy stuff between missions. I mean, that would
Oh,
just be
the Bank
horrible.
Heist DLC for Thief 2014, the biggest disappointment. But yeah, I don't want to get into this.
Well, we have such a storied history with bank missions and Thief with First City, so.
No, but do you know, like the collectors, or I don't know, day one edition or what, you paid like $10 more because they promised you like a bank heist mission, and they referred it to like, hey, in the Thief 2 there was like that famous bank mission, and you were like, oh, amazing, and then it was just like a, I don't know, a 5% size of the original bank mission, and yeah. I'm got it.
Yeah, I would. I'm interested now from having this conversation to finally maybe give Thief 2014 a shot.
As I said, I think it's a game with a lot of potential, but they totally taffed it up in the. They didn't get what Thief was all about. The different factions. Factions. What do you say?
Factions, like
Factions, because in German you say Fraktion with an R.
Interesting.
You have that. Then you have that. This was actually something that gave me hope. Like you have that Aaron character. That where you thought, oh, maybe they are picking up the last scene from Thief Deadly Shadows, but then she's like dislikable character, but you should care for her, in the game, because for whatever reason you don't like her, and she acts really not for sympathy, and
Just edgy.
yeah, she's not edgy, she's just bitchy, and I don't know, they made so many wrong decisions, and the worst thing is that they didn't get Garrett's character really right, because then there is that guy, I don't know his name anymore, but he's like the leader of the underground, that want to go against like what isn't he called the Lord or whatever, the Baron? It was the Baron.
Baron, yep, yeah,
Right,
the Baron.
and he's like the leader of this underground faction, and he just talks to you one time, like, hey, and then you're like, okay, I'm in, and like, no, like that's not Garrett, It was,
Yeah.
I think the best thing they took over was Besso and how they reimagined him. That was great, and that his crow was still named Genevieve, after his yeah, I don't know if they got a divorce or what, but that, but if you take that, why not the other things that are way more important?
If you play fan missions, Genevieve became a zombie.
Right, and they picked, of course, yeah. I think they went.
Fan missions are canon to this show. No, just teasing. But it's just so shocking. Like I said this before, but like they got so much right with the third Deus Ex game, and the fact that they couldn't get that right with Thief 4 or Thief 2014 is just kind of disappointing.
I would be very curious to compare the list of developers and see if it was even the same team, though, because sometimes in a large studio you have different teams on different games.
True. I'm sure there was a lot of departures and a lot of different people that were working on it. I know that the game, and maybe this could make a potential episode topic later on down the road if the audience wants to hear more about it, but I know that the game had a really troubled development, I think,
Yes.
from what I've read.
And I think what I got from an interview, I think the lead designer, he seemed to be very arrogant, and I can imagine that it would have been very hard to work with him. And he wanted to make his own agenda, maybe. And of course, then there's the pressure from Square Enix, and yeah. But maybe one day we will talk about Thief 2014 if we all replayed it or played it for the first time. And then we can give our opinions on it. I think that would be interesting. And one day,
Yeah, I
But-
do own it.
I think because Seth has to leave soon, and I think we covered a lot. Of course, not everything. There's so much to talk about. Maybe you guys, you Taffers, you listeners can add to this. And yeah, but I think this was a great introduction to introduce you guys, Jake and Seth. Yeah, I think you are a very good addition to the team. You have a lot of interesting thoughts and yeah, are great for discussions like that. I'm looking forward to the next episodes, and you guys have ideas for topics. So yeah, I think we will have an increase of variety. And
Oh, yeah, we got plenty of ideas cooking. Just
Yeah.
to let the fans know. And yeah, thank you for having me. Hopefully the Taffers like what we put out here. I think this is a strong episode, some really good discussion. I love this community. I love the fans. Best fan base in gaming. Don't at me. So yeah, it's awesome.
You're now destroying what you built up over the last 2 hours, but
No, I just love beef, and I love you guys. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I know what I'm gonna do tonight. I'm gonna play some fan missions.
yeah, you have to know that they haven't played so many, so you guys have to keep up. Yeah, just go through our episodes list. You find some great ideas there, or go with Dr. K or Melon, or whatever is his name. Yeah, but yeah, thanks for being part of this and for the future, and thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you liked this episode, and yes, we are back, and I think we will give you some new episodes in the near future with not months between them. And yeah, anything else to say?
Not from me.
I think that about does it. Very well put. And thank you all so much for listening and for your support to the show.
Yeah, and thanks
enjoy.
to all the people that gave us their opinions and comments on my question I put out on Twitter and YouTube. That's amazing. I think it's the biggest interaction before a mission, except the Stephen Russell episode, but that was something else. Yeah, I'm so glad for the community to interact with us, and thank you all, guys, and see you next time. Thanks, Seth, Jake. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Home sweet home.